Today, when you come forward to receive communion, I invite you to see the confetti and how it spreads, and remember that it is our call to spread this good news too. Now today, we have an Easter egg hunt after worship, and this one is one that the adults and some of our children even helped us to get ready for. So last week, at the end of last week, when the kids were getting the eggs ready, they were stuffing the candy in the eggs. And then one of them realized that Easter and April Fools are the same day. And so they began to say to one another, what can we do to make the eggs into a joke? And so at first they said, well, maybe we'll just leave them empty. That would be a joke. Then someone said, well, maybe just empty candy wrappers. No one would expect that. That would be a good joke. But then, just as suddenly, someone else said, what if we stuffed them as full as possible so they can't even close? No one would expect that. What if we took one egg and stuffed it inside of another egg and made super eggs? Now that would be a good joke. And so with that idea, that's the idea that they ran with. And so suddenly their hands were a flurry of activity, and they were shoving as much candy as they could into the eggs so they could barely close. And they were taking smaller eggs and shoving them into bigger eggs as fast as they could. Some of you in the egg hunt just might find a super egg later today. But my friends, when Sarah shared this story with me, all I could think was, what a great story for Easter. I love the story. I love how the kids went from thinking, maybe I'll just put empty candy wrappers, to no, a good joke would be to make super eggs stuffed as full as possible. I love that that's what they thought would be the best joke they could do. To their minds, both things would be unexpected. An empty egg, a super egg, both would be unexpected. Both would make a good joke for April Fools. But one of them would be that much better. And so, as often is the case, our kids get it. And so they made super eggs for us. Because they're right. I cannot help but think that today is a super egg kind of day. I love this so much. Now, some of you know that I have been overly excited for today, for Resurrection Sunday and April Fools to fall on the same day. For some, you've wondered about that, about why I find that so amusing. But I think that there's something powerful that our kids understand, is that today can be a super egg kind of day. Resurrection is about the unexpected happening, and it being so much better than we could have imagined. That's exactly what today is about. I know that for some of you, it feels a little too casual for me to talk about April Fools and Resurrection side by side. For some, we approach the Holy of the Holiest days with a serious reverence. And so it can be hard to wonder about where is the holy humor in this. And you know, I think you're right that they don't fit side by side if you're used to April Fool's Day pranks that are nothing more than eggs with empty candy wrappers in them. Which isn't that, to be honest, how most of our pranks go on April Fools? We set up an expectation only to dash it so that someone else is left feeling foolish so we can yell gotcha at the end. So we put toothpaste in jelly donuts. Or we wrap grapes to look like chocolate eggs so that at the end we can yell gotcha and get a good laugh. But I wonder if maybe our kids know something that we overlook. I wonder if today might be as much about super eggs as empty candy wrappers in an empty shell. What if there is more to this day than empty candy wrappers and pranks that leave someone else feeling foolish? What if there is holy humor in a good joke? What if there is holy humor when our expectations are simply blown away beyond what we could have imagined? My friends, I believe that our children know something about the truth of today as a super egg kind of day. Because today, on Easter Sunday, on the day of resurrection, this is the day when we celebrate that what we thought was unimaginable is real and is true and is for us and is good. We are surprised by God. The only ones who are dealt a joke egg filled with an empty candy wrapper today is death. Death is the only one left with an egg that they don't really want. Evil is the only other person left holding an egg that is filled with nothing but a candy wrapper. That's it. Everyone else, you and me and Jesus and the first disciples and every disciple since and every living creature in creation, we receive the promise of resurrection. We get super eggs. More super eggs than Oprah could hand out. Super eggs for all of us. Because what we get is resurrection life. We get so much more than we could have imagined. We get hope that is so abundant that it burst free from a tomb. We get living, breathing hope and life again. As our kids would say, that's a good joke. Because the truth is that Jesus did die. He was killed for what he represented in the world. He represented peace in a world of violence. He represented love and compassion in a place of oppression. He represented hope in a world of despair. And people in power were afraid of it. He was killed for it. That was no joke. There's nothing funny about that. There is nothing false about that. The women who came to the tomb that first Easter morning, they saw it. They knew this. They came expecting death because why wouldn't they? Every single time before this, death had always won. Every single day before this, it had seemed that the forces of power and of evil and oppression and of greed and of fear, that they had won every single day. So why would this day be any different? So the women went expecting death. They didn't understand what Jesus had tried to teach them before, and they wouldn't understand even in that moment. So they went expecting death. They went expecting eggshells filled with empty candy wrappers. And yet, they got so much more. The most amazing miracle beyond our understanding, surprised by a messenger coming with good news. I know you're looking for Jesus, he said. He's not here. He is risen. You're not going to find him here in the tomb. Take a look. You're not going to find him. He's already on his way back to Galilee. If you want to see him, go find him there, alive in Galilee. They expected death and they got resurrection life. They got the super egg of all super eggs. They got abundant living hope burst from a tomb. They expected that despair and hopelessness would still be on display. And yet, they got the living Jesus. God triumphant at last. The super egg to end all super eggs. It is death. Death is the one who is left holding the egg with the empty candy wrapper inside. Only in this case, it wasn't an empty candy wrapper. It was the empty linens that had wrapped Jesus' body. That's all that death has left to hold on to. Evil, the ways of fear and of greed and of hopelessness and of despair, they are the ones hiding their face in shame, mocked by the cross that is now empty, victorious, reigning over them. My friends, I'm not above a God who will say gotcha to death and evil. I think that's pretty good news. if there is any foolishness in this story at all for us, for those who come after, for those first disciples, for any disciples since then, if there's any foolishness at all for us, it's that this isn't the end of the story. If we think it's the end of the story, then we've missed it. This is just the beginning of the story. The good news bursts forth like confetti and will go everywhere we do. The only way we are fools is if we are left standing, peering in an empty tomb, examining it to our own satisfaction. Because this is not the end. This isn't where Mark's story ends. If you notice in this story, the women don't even see Jesus. They say, the messenger tells them, if you want to see Jesus, you have to go back to Galilee. Now that might seem a strange detail. It might seem like an odd detail, a small detail. It might not mean too much to us. But what it means is that Jesus is already alive, bringing forth resurrection life in Galilee, a real place where he had done all of his ministry before. That's where Jesus had been doing his ministry in Mark's gospel, is in Galilee. That's where he fed those who were hungry. That's where he healed those who were hurt. That's where he loved those who were lonely and outcast. That's where he challenged ways of injustice, was in this place of Galilee. Galilee is the place of lived ministry. Galilee is the place of miracles. And Jesus is already back there again, back at it. The women are told that if they want to see resurrection life, they're going to have to go back to Galilee and look for all those places where hope is breaking forth again, where life is triumphant, all those places where a miracle surprises us. Women are to go back and see it, because resurrection is not the end of the story. It's not just the story that gives us hope when our own lives end, that there in the shadow of our own tomb we'll find Jesus. This is a story that calls us away from the tomb while we are yet living to find Jesus in all the places in the world where resurrection life and hope break out again. All the places that surprise us in good ways again. We are invited to go and see all the ways that Jesus is busy trading in empty candy wrappers for super eggs again and again and again. The only possible way that you and I can be the fools in this story is if we refuse to leave the tomb. The only way we are fools is if we refuse to take up the call and go and see where resurrection life breaks forth again. The only way we are the fools is if we refuse the invitation to come and be part of Jesus' healing ministry while we are yet alive. We are only fools if we refuse to take up the victory dance triumphant over death. If we refuse to move our feet in protest. If we refuse to take up the victory song of God's triumph and raise our own voices to triumph for neighbors long neglected. The only way we are the fool is if we'd rather stand in the shadow of the tomb instead of taking the good news, the resurrection life that is for all of us, into the world wherever we go, like the confetti that clings to our feet wherever we walk. We are only the fools if we will not bring peace to answer violence. We are only the fools if we will not bring hope to answer despair. We are only the fools if we will not bring love to answer indifference everywhere we go. We're only the fool if we think this is the end instead of the beginning of our story. Only the fool if we will take God too seriously to revel in the holy humor of a good joke. A joke that leaves God saying gotcha to death and despair and evil. said it before, I'm not above a God that will do that. I am all about a God who will do that. That is good news to me. And today we get to choose what kind of foolishness we are about. Are we going to be the fools who stay lingering around the tomb, seeking sanctuary in the four walls of a place? Or are we going to be the ones exchanging empty candy wrappers for God's super eggs of hope and love and compassion and peace and triumph and compassion? I said that twice. Maybe we can hand out compassion twice. My friends, I don't know about you, but I think it's a really, really, really good thing to see that death is played for the fool and life is triumphant because of what God can do. I can't understand it or explain the miracle, but I think it's really great. I think it's pretty great that we are invited to join the victory dance over the forces of evil. I think it's really great that we are invited to be part of a way that shows that the only fool are the forces of evil still at work in our world. My friends, that is good news, and I am ready to join the victory dance. I am ready to celebrate that good news. And so today, on this day, when April Fools and Easter align, all I have to say for us is thanks be to God for resurrection life. Thanks be to God for holy humor. Thanks be to God for playing a fast one on death and evil that benefits all of us. Thanks be to God for super eggs, and thanks be to God for children who get it more than we do sometimes. Hallelujah. Amen. At this time, I'd like to invite us into our hymn of response. This is not a typo. It is not a joke. The bulletin is wrong. I changed my mind. Our hymn of response is number 261, Lord of the Day.